So I also make zines. So if you would like a zine, I'm going to be featuring some of the parts of the zine. So, yeah, this is all original art. Pretty much haven't improved drawing since elementary school. Okay, so this is you after the talk. So basically, I'm going to walk you through like what are the ways to better understand your brain using open source technology. But first, I'm going to like give you some background behind like what's going on in the brain and what are we actually measuring with some of the technology we use. So we have the body electric. So the body has lots of biosignals, and we can record them using different devices. One thing we can use are electrodes, and electrodes can measure various things, especially voltages. So here we have, it's a neuron. It's a nice neuron, yeah, so. I told you, can't draw. So what happens with the neuron is that it's like it's at resting potential, it's like kind of hanging out. And then it gets some input in the dendrites, which you can see here. So when there's some input in the dendrites, they're like, hey, I'm just like kind of waking up now. And when it hits the threshold, it's like, shit, I'm gonna just like fire a lot of stuff. So if you go down, 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 you can see this is a representative of like a sodium ion. And the sodium ion is a bit bully, and he's kind of just pushing people around. And like once it gets all the way down, all of the bullies gets here and just like starts chucking out neurotransmitters. So this is basically what's happening in all of our neurons all the time. Make the body great again. Okay, so the idea behind EEG comes from this guy named Hans Berger. So Hans was just like on his horse, because it's like the earlier 20th century, and like he's just like riding along and he like falls off and he like hurts himself. And then like the next day he's at home and then he gets rung up and he picks up the phone and it's his dad. His dad gets on the phone and he says, hey, how are you doing? Your sister says that something was up. Something was probably up because at this time, it's like the early 20th century, so she didn't go to Facebook to see what happened. So he actually said, hey, so it's very funny that you called because yesterday I fell off a horse and I really hurt myself. And so Hans was like, there must be something. It's called psychic energy. I'm going to measure the psychic energy of the universe. So he's like sets out and he like creates this device that's known as the EEG. So he's like, yeah, we're all connected to the Ethernet, and it's like, I went there. Yeah. So he creates this device, and what he ends up finding is that, oh, I can measure the voltage changes of the brain. Sorry?
Low battery.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep talking.
Yeah,
now you have to stick to the time.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I don't even know how long I'm going. Okay, so basically what's happening is that you can just measure
you have
like
2 minutes.
population. Okay, awesome. Populations of neurons that are like all firing synchronously. So they're all like, hey, I'm firing. And like we can measure that, and then that's what's captured with like electrodes on your head, and you can see here, and then you get like a voltage readout. It's similar to like a voltmeter. And here's like some examples of some EEGs. So these are some like laboratory EEGs, and this is like more of the commercial ones. See how like sexy that EEG looks. And this is one that you can print with like 3D printing material. So there's a company called OpenBCI, and they make open source like hardware that's responsible for measuring EEG activity that is Arduino based. So if you like Arduinos and you like hacking and hardware, you can just like buy this. It's all open source, and you can measure your brain activity using this EEG. So what you're measuring is like, so if you know a voltmeter, it's basically like you have a hot one and then you have like a reference. So you're measuring the difference between these two, and then you get some wave like here, and then you try to figure out what it means. And that's basically like what EEG is. And there's like lots of cool resources. There's like a new meetup called Neurotech X, and with the meetup, it's all about crowdsourcing from neuroscientists and people in the field of like biohacking and neurohacking, and they all come together, and there's resources and there are meetups, and they just like try to inform you about like what's going on with the brain and give you all the resources, and it's like all open and everything, so it's all good. yeah, so these are some more open source hardware. There's like backyard brain, so if you want to measure like your muscle strength and you want to see how does the brain actually control your muscles, there's a device that's called an EMG, which is electromyogram, so it measures muscle activity. And this is me with some technology that I made. So this is an open source eye tracker, so if you want to measure your eye movements and measure your brain activity, try to relate the two. There's a guide on my GitHub page, so you can like check it out. It's pretty cool. That's a birthday cake. And this is some open source software that I've been working on. So this is all done in JavaScript. It's on GitHub. These are the 3 different projects that I'm related to on there. And I think that this does something, if I click it, yeah. So you see the waves are moving. So this is what happens when you have brain activity. So that's a good sign. I think that's all I have to say about that. I think this is my last slide. Okay, cool.